Welcome to this high-level feature demo of Projectum Power PPM, the solution for project portfolio management, which is built on the Microsoft Power Platform. Right now, we are inside Power PPM. This is the main page. This can be tailored and styled according to the organizational needs and visual identity. If we look at the left side, we have the menu pane. We also have different menus, so different areas that we can select from. Some users can see them all, some can only see a few. And when you expand underneath these headers, you will find the different features or areas of interest. So if it's work, for instance, you have the portfolios, the programs, the projects or initiatives, as we call them, and much more. But to start this demonstration, we are starting off by going to Microsoft Teams. Because when we are using Power Platform and Teams, we also have the ability to use chatbots. And these chatbots today can be also utilizing ChatGPT, so Open AI, in a secure way by using the Microsoft Azure Open AI infrastructure. When we are in Teams, you will notice that you have this chatbot. And if I go down here and I write hi, for instance, then it will, within a few seconds, give me the options that I have. And this can again be tailored to the needs. So it says, hello, I'm your assistant. Let me know how I can help. And you can then create a project, an idea. You can learn something. You can get support. Or you can just chat using GPT, so ChatGPT, in a secure way. Now, for this demo, we're going to start off by doing an idea. So we're going to click Create Idea. And based on that, it will ask me some questions that it knows are needed in order to create new ideas. So if I say my webcast demo, 1, 2, 3, that could be the name. After that, it will probably ask me about the description, my super idea description. And I think that's enough in this case, in the out-of-the-box experience, for it to create the project, or the idea in this case. And it then says, here's the link to your idea. And do you want more help? If you click yes, then you will again be prompted with the different options you have. So if I click on this link up here, it will take me directly to the idea that has been created inside Power PPM. And you can see it has carried over the description and also the name. And again, much more could be added if you wanted to. That's all up to how we configure these bots. Now, when we have created an idea, you will notice that there are lots of fields we can fill in. So tagging it to the right portfolio, having a start and end date. Let's say it should start today and maybe end, let's say November here. You can add a budget, for instance, like 150,000. This could be multi-currency if you wanted to, so you can have a currency picker. You can, for instance, rate it against your strategic goals. So if you have different OKRs, as we call them, so objectives and key results, you could go up and down in terms of how much impact you believe that this idea has on a certain goal. So if we select 8, then we could also select the appropriate, let's say, driver or goal, which could be growth in APAC. And we could explain why this idea is good. Furthermore, we have market fit, also from low to high, where we can also explain why it's a good market fit. And finally, we then have the revenue down here, where we can say it's high revenue, because over the next 3 years, we expect this idea or project to generate, let's say, 500,000 USD. Then we can save that information. Once we do that, which takes less than a second, you will see that it now has an ROI up here of 2.3. There are lots of things we haven't done. We don't have a timeline. We don't have the idea type and so forth. But again, this is just to illustrate that we can capture demand before it becomes a project. Up here, we have the stage gate model, where you can also expand. And here you will see there are different requirements in order for this project to progress. And because we have a name, because we have a description, and because we have ROI, I'm allowed to progress to the next stage. As an example, if I did not have a description and I tried to progress up here, you would be blocked until you have done what it tells you that you should do. So let's add the description in again. And that means we can then go to the next stage. So this way you can have a streamlined approach to capture early ideas, mature them inside this PPM tool. And once you're ready, you can have other people score it, or you could manually go in and say, let's now convert this idea to a real initiative or a real project. So by selecting the yes button and hitting save, then out of the box, what we do is that we convert this to a project, but we also keep the original idea, which means that we now have a corresponding project, but we also have the idea. It's two different things, so we can always manage them separate. Now, if I click on this link here, we'll go straight to the newly created project called Webcast Demo 123. And as you can see here, this is more like a typical stage gate model for projects. Initiate, business case, execute, and so forth. What is cool about Power Apps and Power PPM is that we can also have a dynamic stage gate model. Now, this means that if you click here, you can have a trigger, for instance, a budget constraint or similar, that will automatically set an approval for yes or no. So if it says yes, you will see a gate approval popping up. And a gate approval in this case means you need an approval by somebody in your organization and also a comment for why they approved it and when they approved it. Here we rely on Teams as well and a standard out-of-the-box approval flow that Microsoft offers to their users. So we have a dynamic approach to stage gates. You can also have the ability to select your own stage gate. So you can have a large, small, medium-sized, whatever project types. But let's just follow the one we have right here and look at the options we have as a project manager. First of all, once we create a project, we can have it also create a Microsoft Teams site and a channel and a SharePoint file container. So that's just, we'll get back to that, but it's nice to know that it's integrated deep into the Microsoft Teams backend. Then we have, of course, lots of fields we can use. Just as an example, if I select, for instance, Carsten as the sponsor for this project, we are looking and using the data from the Azure AD, which means that everything we have around Carsten is available here as well, which is great. So it's not just the name, it's actually very rich information about the person. We can also set the status of this project to active, for instance, and we can add another description if we need to. Further, we can add, for instance, a steering group with this guy and maybe myself as well, and so forth. On the right-hand side, we then have the portfolio, so we can link it to a certain portfolio or create a new portfolio if we have the rights to do it, but let's take the Grow portfolio. We could attach it to a program. Let's take this one. We could also categorize the type of investment based on different types of investments. In this case, it's following the Gartner zero prioritization approach. Let's say it's a growth type. And then again, if it's born out of the strategy, then typically we flag the project as an OKR initiative, which means that we always have to select the right KPI or the key result that it links to. Later on, we can attach benefit plans and the realizations of those benefit plans, which is another demo. So let's try and hit save now. Here we go. Now notice we also have a status which has not been set. We cannot set it here. We need to go to the status area up here. I'll do that in just a second. And we have the start and the end date, which is the approved timeline. So this is like the minimum schedule information coming from the steering group. This means that if I go to my timeline, we here have our own custom developed and very advanced Gantt chart. Here we can use standard templates like these that you can create yourselves, and you can expand them, have pictures, and also see before you select them, what is this project all about, or this template. If you select one, you can also select another and then see the sequence of how it will be added into the VBS structure of the project. But let's, in this case, try to do something different. Let's start from using AI instead. So here I can go in and create something, for instance, an IT project starting early August 2023 using the standard PMI PMBOK work items, for instance. Let's see what happens if I do this. So now it's using ChatGPT from Azure Open AI to generate the structure, so the schedule, which means a VBS structure, and a duration and a start and end date. You can have it do much more if you wanted to, but in this case, that's the out-of-the-box experience. So here you'll now see that if I remove the resources, we now have created a typical IT project, very high level. In this case, I limited it for the demo so that it doesn't continue to do more tasks than around 10 or 11 in this case. But as you can see, it's already now respecting PMI initiation, planning, execution, and those typical phases. It could have been Prince 2 as well or something else. So whatever you want AI to do is something we can tailor the system to do, and we can do it securely and quite often without the use of code. This Gantt chart, on the other hand, can do a lot. You'll notice that you have lots of these columns. You can add more as you would like, or you can also, as an end user, remove those that you don't need. Let me just try and remove lots of things here that I don't want, like these, and maybe this as well, and this, and so forth. and then it becomes a little bit easier to look at like this. You will also notice that we have this start flag. Now that means, let me just move the project like this. This is the starting date that has been approved by the steering group. So the 2 dates you saw right here, start and end date. This is a very simple way to make sure that if someone plans this project to start earlier than we have approved, we will flag all the tasks that are before the start date, including the entire project. So we can see and flag and report on these issues. To fix this issue in this case, of course, we have to change the start date, which can only be done if you are a member of the steering group typically. You would then go in here and change the start date. Or you simply, of course, move the entire phase to start here so that we don't have the problem. Similar, we also have the end date. If I zoom out a bit here, the finish date, and the same thing happens if you go beyond the finish date, you will see a warning indicator as well. Now, this is not to say that we don't have the normal baselines that people are used to. So if you have a project and you're satisfied with how it looks, and maybe you create some links like this, or create some extra tasks, so new task, 1, 2, 3, like this, and you move it where it should be. Once you're done with this, you can then go up here, sorry, not here, but here, and create your baseline. So my version 1, and set it. This creates a full copy of the entire plan. So now all tasks have 2 lines, probably like you're used to in other planning tools. We can also go in and add people to these tasks. The way we can do that is by either double-clicking on the task, and this again pops up this task form that you can tailor, or as an administrator you can. So you can tag the type of task and the status of it, or link it to a risk, or whatever you want. Let's say this is a legal matter. And let's say we're going to add a user like myself, and give me 50 hours. And we're going to add Carsten as well, and give him 25 hours. So all up, that gives us 75 hours. Let's try and save that one. So now we can see Peter and Carsten has been added to the task. And that also means that if we click on this heat map down here, we can see that Peter and Carsten has, in this period, in total these hours for this task. If we zoom in a bit more, if you want to, you will then be able to go into these details if we click on days, and very detailed see how the allocations has been done across these dates that we have allocated. It also understands the context of a weekend and so forth. When we move things here, immediately we see the impact below, even before we slip or we click on the mouse button. So, and again, if we squeeze this so that it doesn't fit, you will see immediately the red icons popping up, or the red indicators, showing that people are over-allocated. So that is what we call the real-time heat map experience. Now, besides that, we also have the ability to, of course, link one task to another by doing this. This way we flag that we have an issue, like this. You will see that there's a little indicator. This is called soft links. That means that if this changes, nothing happens to the other one, except you will see if there's an issue. This also means that if this task moves to here, the issue is gone, because there are no overlaps. Now, some people are preferring or used to working with what is called hard links. So let's try and remove the soft link and do the same thing again, moving this one to start here. So in this case, it pushes automatically the next task. So this way we have what is called soft links or hard links, depending on what you're used to. Now, that was the simple introduction to this schedule. It does a whole lot more, which I'll get back to, but probably also for other deep dive demos if we are to cover everything. So now let's try and move on over to another tab, which is called Financials. So if we click here, you will see that we open up our financial grid, which has both calendar years up here if you want to, or fiscal years, depending on your setup. In this case, I can see that in 23-24, we have a rough cost estimate of 150,000 for CapEx for the software. Again, I could do the same thing for materials, either by typing in per month, quarter, or year. If I do it per year, we're going to add in a number like this, and it will then automatically distribute it into quarters and months. We have budget, actuals, ETC, EAC, currency. You can change the currency to other currencies in real time. We also have cost centers you can attach. So, for instance, ERP system identifiers so that you can connect with actual cost and integrate those two. And you can do a whole lot more than just this in the grid. But again, this is a big area to cover. So the point is, in this case, we have the ability to do budgets, actuals, and forecasts. And for that reason, we are also able to roll up this information to the main page that we have over here and see that right now the project has a total budget of 150,000. So now benefits could then also come from the grid, or they could come from just a simple input field, depending on what you want. So that was timeline and financials. Now, if we go to the risks and issues, again, here you will see that we have something pretty basic, which is a risk matrix. And now you want to add in risk items, so the risk log. Here we also use AI, so you can click on this one and say, create 4 typical risks related to an IT implementation, for instance. So again, you can write whatever you want. And by using that, ChatGPT again will connect the dots with AI and your input and generate some risks, including probability factors and the impact that it estimates these risks to have. If I would have said 20 tasks or 20 risks, sorry, it would have created 20. So this is again a simple function that helps the project managers preload different logs or registers with information coming from the internet or whatever source of information, including your own, that you might have. On the KPI status, this is where we can set the status. We see this in Projectum and in Power PPM as a process. This means that if I click New Status Report, I will be shown this, where I can say today is the date where I'm going to do my gate decision or biweekly status. Things are going great. And I can set everything to green and hit Save and Close. This creates a full copy of the project so that we can see the budget at this point in time is 150,000 and everything is green. Now, if the next month, let's try to move this one to gate approval up here, like this. So you can now see on the basic info that this is all in gate approval. And just save that. Then imagine you go back into your KPI status, you create a new, and we cheat a bit and say it's now the 8th of August and we need to do a new update. Things are not so good. In this case, we can see the last values we put in on the KPIs. And for the new one, we're going to say cost is good, scope is good, but schedule is bad, and so are resources, but quality is good. So if we save and close this one, we now see the new result like this, where it's red. And that also means that we can see that we have moved, for instance, from one phase to another, or the budget has increased. And on the front page, we can now see that we are in the situation where we need help, and that it has been 0 days before the PM or the project manager updated the project. So a simple way again to show this. Notice also down here that we are automatically showcasing all the milestones from the plan, including the status, both on KPI, if it's delayed or not, when it should be done, and the name for this milestone or task. And this is real time. So if I go to the timeline and I find my milestones, like this one, and I mark it, let's go in here, for instance, as something that is completed. I could do it this way. I could also go in here and write 100%. End of day, we get to the same result. This means that immediately on the front page, if I go back, you will now see that this one has been completed. So pretty good for getting this sometimes large plans surfaced to your eyes when you open up the project to know if there's something you should be looking at. On the other things we can do, if we click on the documents, you will see that we can now load everything that goes on inside the site or the Teams, so the SharePoint site or the Teams channel for this specific project. And the way that it knows this is because, of course, it has the connection down here to where Teams is. You can, of course, use that or not. That's all up to you. But if you want to connect it to the two worlds, it's definitely possible out of the box. So this was the conclusion of the project level way of working in Power PPM. Now let's try and move up a little bit in terms of our hierarchy, because above here we have the programs. And within the programs, we then have also, if you click on this one, the ability to create programs top down and manage these separate from the projects. So this is a program, and again, we can style this and tailor it configuration-wise with whatever fields and different options that you need, and stage gate as well. We have the timeline, which is the combination of all projects, including the program's own tasks up here. So the program can carry its own tasks and milestones. Let me just try to zoom out a bit like this. Besides this, we can also go below here and see all the tasks from across all the projects. I can also filter by gates or key milestones or legal matters, and then again find that we have in this project, in this phase, and so forth, this information. We can also link different tasks to each other across the projects, so you can do cross-project dependency maps. Besides this, we also have a financial grid, which shows you the combination of all financials in one take. We can see a more traditional view like this, which is a list of all the projects within the program. We have the risk matrix you saw before. We have stakeholders as well, where you can pre-populate different stakeholders and show them here as well in a grid. Status reporting, dashboard, etc. Now, if we go beyond, again, the program to the next level, the portfolio. Up here, we can also create a portfolio top-down or open up an existing one. Let's take this one. So the portfolio as well, or the portfolio manager, will immediately see all the projects or programs part of this portfolio. It could be that you want to tag the portfolio against a certain year, against a currency, against a budget target, for instance, or a type of portfolio, or something else that you might prefer. If I click on roadmap, so up here on the portfolio level, we use the control called roadmaps, because these roadmaps are much more than just a Gantt chart. And the reason is that I can go into level 0 or level 1, and see that we have programs, and underneath this program we have this project and then this epic. So again, this is a product manager or product management. So we can have whatever artifacts of work you want to have in the same timeline. I'll get back to later how we can create roadmaps from the top down, not as portfolios, but as separate roadmaps similar to programs, where we connect the dots and create cross whatever in our organization dependency maps. So besides this, if I go to this one, we also have Kanban boards. This is sort of looking like Microsoft Planner. It's the same style and look and feel, and you can of course move things back and forth. But what we also do is that we are actually looking at the projects here. These are real-time cards that are updated with information. We can see if stuff is behind or so delayed. We can see the total cost or benefits or count of work within each of these lanes, and you can create your own, of course. I can also change the view to department views or funding years or whatever sort of view you want. If I take this one now, which has a cost of 430,000, and move it into transformation, you will see that the budget changes immediately, and also the work in progress, including benefits. So it's a simple way to maybe balance out what you're working on or what should start next. Also notice that if I move this one up here, this becomes number 1, and that forces this one to become number 2 in a ranking setup. So we have ranking built into this view, which is very useful for the portfolio managers. Now, on the dynamic grid here, let me load this one. This is something else. Again, you'll see the cards where you can filter by program or whatever sort of filter you need. But what you can do is build your own 2x2, 3x3, whatever you want. It's configurable up here. And you can then pull in your projects into the 2x2 areas like you would in PowerPoint or similar tools, and immediately see on the right side the new ranking of these projects. I can also remove it if I want to, and then the ranking will change immediately. And this ranking number is stored, including the points somewhere else, that we can later use to do for what-if scenarios. And finally, of course, here we also have the dashboards, which is not Power BI, but a simple way to get an overview. Now let's try to move away from these portfolios and look at the cross-portfolio reporting. So if we go up to the report area, we have our Power Hub reports, and that's because Projectum and Power PPM has a service called Power Hub, which is in Azure. Here we store all information real time about whatever is going on in the tool, but also historical data and changes. So we have views like these where you can look at strategic information or filter by portfolios, for instance, and still be able to click anywhere in the views and see the real-time view and result of that information. We can also look at it in accordance to categorization of the different initiatives or programs, or our strategy, so the OKRs. Down here, we then have other sections like a typical dashboard with red, green, yellow indicators, stage gate funnel, and lots more on the financial side. We have areas like financials and details, CapEx, OpEx, over time, for instance, and tracking also the highest cost variance, which is typically of interest to those in controlling. And then we have the timeline, which is cross, again, everything Gantt charts and OKRs and much more. What I want to show you is in this case this one, because here we can see the impact of having data and historical data. Here we're able to play the data because we know the points in time in the past. We can also go backwards in time, And we can even go to a point in time and click on items to see how it ended up right here, or seeing the path it took. Or play it again and then still be able to track those of interest. So this is how we can use data to create powerful dashboards that can even predict what's going to happen in the near-term future. Besides Power BI, other areas that we could cover is, for instance, something like change management, where we're able to go in and create a change plan or assess a certain project. So let's say we want to assess a project, and we want to assess this one we just did. Now we are assessing the user or the employee impact from this project. Let's just call it my assessment 1, 2, 3. So here I can then go in and look at the change characteristics following the ProSci model for change management. So for instance, say scope of change is regional, it's 100 to 400 people, and then we can go in and score according to all these different standard ProSci questions to capture the characteristics of this change. If I save this one, that gives it a characteristic score of 44. So those are the points. On the attributes level, I can do the exact same thing. Of course, it's different questions, different answers. You can change these as well, but if you're using ProSci, this is the standard questions that they will give you as well. Save. And finally, we now have the X and the Y axis. That means we can go to impacted roles, where we can go in and also create our assessments. So saying we have, for instance, users in DK, we have 500 of these, and they will be impacted process-wise very high, systems-wise as well, tools not so much, job role a lot, and so forth. This is to create the unique assessment of each user type or profile that is going to be impacted from the change. So this tool as well can be used in conjunction with sub-assessments, so other people can assess the same change, and altogether that gives this overview of having different assessments per project and the scoring and impact. So we can use that when we plan which projects to start and when to end them. Finally, down here we also have the roadmaps. These are simple views that shows you everything going on from a timeline perspective. So if I go to level 1, you will then see if I click on, let's say, the Grow portfolio, everything that goes on in the program Grow portfolio. I can also zoom out like this and see all the information in one take. These columns can be added as well. You can add in that you want to see specific milestones. You can also add in you want to see specific release points in time. So for instance, like these points in time where you have your different wave releases like we do in Projectum. So wave 6 is right now, then we have wave 5 later on, and so forth, depending on your setup, of course. That being said, we can also, which is really cool, let me just go back to the main page here. We can also show dependencies in this view. So if I filter down and find, let's see if we can find the Grow portfolio and the accelerated growth project, which I think is underneath this one here. Notice this little button we have here. This means that if I click up this one, you will see all the projects that are sending something to me, that I'm depending on those, and all the projects that are depending on me and my project. So those are these ones. So the intake and the output, you could say. So this means that we have dependency maps that are unique per item that you want to look up by clicking the button here. So besides the roadmaps, we can also create these top-down. So not another thing, but similar to the timeline that you saw in the portfolio. This means we can go into a technology roadmap, and from the top here, be able to create almost like a swim lane chart where we have the technology roadmap. You can create other roadmaps as well, and have different swim lanes, and expand these, and then see different items underneath each. And this information that you put into these containers can be whatever you want. So if I click, for instance, add not lane, but lane item, I can select from what we have in Power PPM. Let's say you want to add the project we just did, which is the webcast project 1, 2, 3. We can select this and hit save, and that will now add it into this track called technology. So it shows up right here. Really cool. You can color different ways that you want to. You can also change the lanes as well, like this, and go in and adjust the start and end date for these lanes, or the color of these, or the name, and so forth. So a simple way to create top-down, for instance, technology or transformation roadmaps. Underneath products, we then have the ability to do product management. So here we have all the products, and for each of these products, the product manager can go in and have his or her own board view across all the key features or key epics that are being managed. Here we have the typical Agile epic Kanban board. We also have an epic list, that you can also style in many ways. We also have the different features that might be connected to your Azure DevOps or Jira tool. So these, again, are connected in our case directly to Azure DevOps. And we also have the roadmap that you saw before that the product manager can use to show to his or her audience what's going to be released looking forward. So each of these epics, by the way, are also shown here like in investments or initiatives. If I open up one of these, you will see that you can actually manage this as you would with a project. It's a different stage gate model, which is more similar to the Agile approach to managing change. But you can do the same thing like with the projects. You can map it against strategy, revenue, market fit, release timings, and so forth. This makes it comparable to your normal projects so that you can do hybrid portfolio management. Now, finally, underneath collaboration, we have the ideas you saw in the beginning. But notice it says my before all these names here or items. This means that this is the view of my assignments in a Kanban board, where I can go in and say this task for this project, which is a lot of hours, I'm in progress with that. This has now been done. And this is real-time updated back into the project plan where these tasks come from. I can also double-click on them and do changes to it directly here. And depending on your setup, you can allow people to, for instance, change remaining work, actual work, or even timesheet on it if you wanted to, which I'll show in just a second. Same thing for changes. So creating changes or change suggestions towards your scope, for instance. So here towards a project manager, I can say new change request, categorize it, map it to an initiative, and also create an explanation to why I want this change to happen and how I believe it's going to impact the project, and save that one. And this, of course, gets rolled up to the webcast demo project so that the project manager gets notified. You saw in the beginning that we had a Power PPM chatbot available in Teams, but just so you know, we also have it available from in here. So here we load up our own Copilot. So if I say hi here, you will see the same thing as in the beginning. You can create projects, create ideas, learn something, submit issues, also internal issues to your IT support team. Or you can do random chat with Azure ChatGPT. So let's say, what are the typical phases in a Prince2 project? That could be a question. So not PMI in this case. And of course, you will then get the answer returned in just a few seconds. So as with this, you can then use this information, copy paste it, or create a new question by saying, yes, I need more help. Let's try something else. Give me 2 ideas for reducing customer churn. So again, it's probably what you've tried as well with ChatGPT, but just in this case, much more secure because it's running inside your own tenant, inside Azure in this case. So not by accessing or sending data to the public internet. So this concludes the demo of Power PPM. There are more features than what I covered, especially around resource and financial management. But for this first, I would say, generic introduction, I believe this is enough for today. Thank you for watching and have a great day.